Hello, everyone. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. It is episode number 96, and it is March the 31st, 2023. Yay, March is over, and it's definitely going out like a lion here. It's been raining. It's been doing a little snow. In some parts, they're having a little
Waffle.
grapple. Mrs. Crabapple. No, that was a character from Simpsons, the two school teachers.
That's crabapple.
Crabapple, whatever. Yeah, but they call her Crabapple.
Yeah.
Or Crabapple. I don't know. Whatever. But okay, so we got some things to show you, got some announcements to make, and then we're going to get to what we said in the line where I put when you assume, you can fill in the rest of it because I'm assuming you know what goes in there. But anyway, so let's look at what I've been working on first. This is I call it Scraps and Stars because it's made up of scrap fabrics and orphan blocks. And actually, I think it turned out okay. Those scraps in the center on the black, the colored ones, those were from the Mosaic Star quilt, Stephanie Stitch's pattern. And those were those fabrics called Poured that Walter bought me a year ago this past Christmas. And you saw that quilt because I did that a while ago. But I had all these pretty scraps left over, and I figured, oh, well, let's use them because they're too pretty to throw away. So I basically made fabric by, just stitching pieces of them together, and then I cut them out into the shape. So you'll notice that some of them in there have maybe 2 or 3 different colors into it. So that's the scrappy part. And then the stars are Lemoyne stars. I did those on my AccuQuilt. And I was just trying the AccuQuilt out. And I did have a notion. I made quite a few of these in color and in black and white. And I had a notion of putting them all together to make a quilt. But I got really kind of tired sewing the suckers together. And I still needed a pile more. So they went in my little box that I call orphan blocks. And I needed to make this quilt a little bigger because I used up all those scraps. And so I pulled those out and put them in. And yeah. So it's a good size lap quilt. It's not huge. And I used it also to test out a new quilting design that I bought from Urban Elements. It's what I'm going to use on that color splash quilt. You've seen this color splash quilt, the one with the appliques on it. But I wanted to see how it would work out. And well, Lucy really cooperated with this one. Wasn't one thread break through all of this.
Would that be a little intense for your what do you call it?
Well, there's a fair amount of negative space on it with the blacks, and that's why I figure it'll probably, depending if I use the variegated thread. In fact, I used a variegated
I just
thread
was thinking that it looked kind of busy on the one that you've got.
I think it wanted to look busy.
Okay.
I have decided that I want to. Well, you see, because I've got those appliques that look like paisleys kind of a thing.
Okay, yeah.
And I thought that shape is picked up in the feathers as well. Leave me alone.
Okay, fine.
You're always picking on me. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Okay, Walter's got something to show you as well, I think. So we went shopping yesterday over at Ultimate Sewing. I didn't really intend to, but I did. And Walter was there too, and I saw this fabric that I really liked. And so show them. Because Walter's going to make me a shirt out of this.
Yeah, I cut it out last night, so hopefully I'll get it done within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, he left scraps all over my cutting table too.
So it's kind of marijuana-like type.
It's not kind of, it is. It's marijuana leaves, but in rainbow. I think it's really pretty.
Actually, cutting out the fabric, it's actually really nice quality fabric. I like it. I think it would make a really nice shirt.
Yeah, well, who makes it? What's the band Salvage? What's the brand?
Dan Morris.
For
QT Fabrics.
QT Fabrics. Yeah, well, we've had some stuff from QT Fabrics before too.
But it feels really nice. It feels like it would be a really nice shirt.
Well, it will be, and I'll look great in it because I always do. And I bought some of that fabric as well, and I also bought one that's in a white color background. It's the same pattern and everything. It's just that they put it on a white as well. I have no idea what I'll do with it, but it's pretty, and I like pretty fabric. So there's another shirt for Walter to have made for me. Will it be made in time for summer?
Well, we'll have to see. Hopefully I'll have it made before we leave.
Ooh, I could, if the weather's half decent, I could take it to Vancouver with us. Well, we'll see. Well, in Vancouver, they won't even notice it's got marijuana because they're used to everything's being marijuana out there. It has been for
Yeah.
years. They're kind of hippies in Vancouver. They're kind of the California of Canada in some ways. But anyways, so yep, that's what we've been up to. So some announcements. What's coming up? Well, we're going to be in April tomorrow, Saturday. So that means the first Wednesday of the month is coming up very quickly next week. And that is April the 5th, I believe. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, April the 5th. And so, that's Craft and Chat Day. And starting at 1 p.m., links in the show notes. Those of you that are on the mailing list, you've gotten your invitation already with the link in it. All are welcome. Come and go as you please. And we run from about 1 until about 5 in the afternoon. And Wednesday is going to be a very busy day because we also have Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen at 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and that'll run until about noon. So what'll happen is we will stop the Sew with Stephanie and Stephen at noon. And if you want to come back for the Craft and Chat, you'll have to click on the link to Craft and Chat to get into it because there are two different links for those events. So yeah, so it's an all-day sew thing, or it can be for you. And if you're not sure about the link for Stephanie and Stephen, then just look in the show notes. It's there as well. But make sure you read the first line in those links. People have been hitting the wrong links. You got to read because those links will go to different places. You can't get onto Craft and Chat if you use Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen after that's over with. Okay, and vice versa. So just read it. It's there. It tells you which one it's for. Because I've had people while we've started one of those sessions write to me right while we're doing it, send me email. I can't find the link. I clicked on something, but it's not letting me in because you didn't click on the right link. Okay, just slow down and read. Okay, so we've got that update on the retreat. I've had one cancellation and I had one person on the waiting list, so that's been filled in. But I do have the waiting list up, and so if you you have a good chance if you get on the waiting list early, if you really want to go, because I know for sure there's going to be more cancellations. It's just inevitable the way things work, right? So, but if you're not on the waiting list, I can't put you in a spot that may come open before May the 6th. Also, I did send out an update to all of those people that are already registered and reminding them that show and share, if you have a picture, one picture only, please, in JPEG format, send to me and send that to me. You do not need to write a description. Don't even bother. Don't waste your time writing me a description because it's not going to appear in the slideshow. But I'm going to put those all together and it will run with probably a musical background to it sometime during the retreat. Okay, and so it'll be picture of your creation and your name, and that's all that will be there, and that's plenty. Because if everybody wrote something and I read those out at the time of the slide, or if I put them up on the slideshow would run for several days, and we don't have several days. It's only a one day affair. Okay, so yeah, but that's for those of you that are already registered. And if you haven't sent me one yet, I mean, it's not you don't have to. You can. Now, I've also had the question as to whether or not spouses can come for the icebreaker cocktail party. And of course they can. I mean, they may not be taking part in the retreat the next day, but that doesn't matter. They can come. The cocktail party's a party.
So, and actually, for that matter, if they want to sit in on the retreat, as long as
oh yeah, sure, they can do that too. I mean, if they want to sit in and watch what's going on at different parts of the retreat because it's one household, that's not a problem. So yeah. Okay, so I've mentioned Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen. I don't think there's anything else I need to tell you about the retreat. We're getting closer to when we're going to be leaving for our time out in Vancouver. And when we do that, I will be checking my email and things, but I'm hoping to have everything really pretty much established before we go, because when we come back, I only have a week um, before the retreat happens again. So, you know, I'm glad that I already have it all filled up because it won't take me much if I have a waiting list. I will have my iPad with me and I'll be able to do certain things there with it. But I mean, I'm on holiday. So, you know, I want to holiday while I'm there. And also in advance, will there be vlogs and Stephen and Walter live and So Chatty and Idiot Quilter? Yes and no. There won't be my usual programs that I put up in a week because I won't be able to access my computer and the stuff I use for that. But as I said, I will have my iPad with me and I will have, of course, my phone. So we will be doing videos. And depending on where we are and what the internet connections are like, I will try to put some up maybe every other day or something like that. Short ones, you know, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes long or something. It depends on the mood. So you can see what we're seeing and that kind of thing. Uh, there might be a Stephen and Walter live. Maybe. Don't know. Again, we have no idea what the internet connections in the places we're staying at is going to be like. But I will try for different something anyway, so it won't be completely. So you won't miss me terribly or miss us terribly. Probably you wouldn't miss me, but you probably miss Walter. Your fan club's probably all crying away there. Oh, Walter, we can't be away from you for 2 weeks. Oh no, we'll go through withdrawal. Oh no, they're going to be mean to me. Okay, whatever, Mr. Bill. Okay, so by the title, you can see we put when you assume, okay, and you know the rest of that, right? When you assume you make an ass of you would be uh in that expression. But the reason I got thinking about this topic is because I've had several emails where people have mentioned to me that they just assumed that something was going to work this way, or they got a product, they figured it was going to work with their sewing machine or something else, and it didn't. And well, I got thinking about that. As sewers, as quilters, we make a lot of assumptions sometimes, and that's maybe not a good thing. So I thought we'd look at some of the most common assumptions that people make, and we'll talk a little bit about them. So the first one that comes right to mind is sewing machine accessories. Okay, you know, extended tables for your sewing machine or other little device you can get. Like you can get pads if you're a quilter. You can get, you know, not a slippery mat for doing free motion quilting on your domestic machine. There's all kinds of other accessories you can get, thread stands and things like that. One size does not necessarily fit all. And you have to be aware of a few things for this. So, you know, one thing, know what your machine is. And what I mean by that is know what its full model name is. Like, don't just say, well, I have a Janome. So this extended table says it's made by
Yeah,
Janome.
you need to know that you have like a 6700P or a M7
or a Skyline S7 or
S7 or a Skyline S3 or something like that. The different models make a difference because some things are interchangeable and some things are not.
mm-hmm.
So, and some are specific for that model.
Yeah.
For instance,
sewing tables.
Sewing tables.
Yeah.
Sewing tables are different for each model depending on the site. Now, some models might have the same sort of platform and you can interchange them, but you have to make sure that that accessory that you're buying is for the product that you have.
Because if you don't get the right one, there is a possibility you'll have a problem returning it because it depends on where you bought it. Now, if let's say you bought it from Amazon or you bought it online, well, the rigmarole to return things when you buy things online is not always easy. So you want to make sure you have the right thing at the time. Now, to give you an example, somebody wrote to me and said they had gotten this extended table and it wasn't fitting right on their Skyline S7, and they knew I had a Skyline S7. So they sent me a picture of their table that they had bought. Now, the picture they sent me I saw part of the table and it looked like my table, but I could see right immediately why they were having problems getting it on, because they had to take the drawer off, the storage drawer on that machine, in order for the table to fit. It's kind of a stupid design that Janome has done, because these little tables that fit right on, and usually with the Skyline S7, for example, in order to access your free arm, you have to take the drawer off. That's where it clips. But in order to put an extended table on it, you also have to take the drawer off. So I noticed that in this picture, it looked like the drawer hadn't been taken off. So I told the person, oh, you need to take the drawer off. But then she asked me if I could send a picture of mine, and I did. She wanted it from the top down, so she could see how it fits all the way around it. And I did send that. She sent me another message, and this time she sent me a picture, a better picture of her table. Well, red flag went up as soon as I saw the name on it. It said Horizon. It is a Janome table, but there is a line of machines, Janome upper end ones, that are called Horizon. And I used to have one, the 15,000 that you've all heard me bitch about over the time. It was a Horizon machine. That table will not fit on any other sewing machine that is not from the Horizon line. She needed a table for the Skyline series for it to fit. So she's going to try and take it back, I think, or whatever with that. But I just wonder, did she go into the store and tell them she needed a table, and whoever sold it to her did not ask her the right questions? Like, what model do you have? I mean, it is
I
a
mean,
possibility.
sometimes you go in and they go, if somebody will say to you, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know what the
Yeah.
situation was, but somebody says, oh, well, do you have a Horizon model? And you might say, well, I think so,
Yeah.
but you need to know.
And sewing machines, to be fair, sewing machine names can be very confusing. Janome has many names for their machines. Like, for example, my M7 is not an M7. It's a Janome Continental M7. My S7 is not an S7. It is a Skyline S7. If I walked in and said, I need a table for Skyline, the first thing they should say to me is, which one? Because there's
Which model?
Yeah, there's an S3, there's an S5, there's an S7, and there's an S9.
And there's an S6 too.
Oh, there's an S6 too. So now probably a table that fits an S7 probably will fit the S5 and the S7 or S6 and that. But I don't know if it would fit the S9. And the reason I say that is because the S9 is a combination embroidery machine and sewing machine. And so that means the spot where the table has to fit over might be bigger, wider, longer, or whatever. So
I mean, yeah, we don't know that. Actually, we're not even sure if that's the case.
we don't know that for sure.
But you have to make sure that the table that you're getting fits that particular sewing machine that you own.
And it can be very confusing online when you're looking for accessories. The best thing to do when you're looking for a specific accessory, whether it's an extended table, a special foot, a special needle plate, whatever, or there's a special feet like rufflers and a circular sewing device and things like that, go to the Janome site, go in under accessories for the particular machine that you have, and see what they list. Now, Janome will give you a number. It's their number. And write that down and take that to your dealer. Now, if you're ordering it online, however, some places have a different number. For example, a place that I've ordered from before that's here in Ontario is called Nova Sewing. And they don't use Janome numbers. They have their own numbers. And I find it very difficult to find a particular accessory on their site. You got to do some hunting. And that site is probably not the only one that's like.
And occasionally manufacturers will renumber their own products over time when a newer model comes out. So sometimes they'll see formerly this number, now this number, right?
So it can get very confusing.
And the other, yeah, another accessory that you have to be careful with, depending on what sewing machine you get, is feet.
That is in the next one.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I forgot I had little pictures of things up here too. Like I was just going to put them up when we were talking. But yeah, here we go. We have feet. So let's go ahead. Okay, yeah, feet. What are you going to say about feet?
Well, feet differ between sewing machines, brands, and feet differ between sewing, like Janome sewing machines. There are different feet for different models of sewing machines, depending on how wide your stitch goes.
Right.
Right? Because you've got in Janome, I believe they have machines that have a 5 millimeter wide stitch, they have a 7 millimeter wide stitch, and they have a 9 millimeter wide stitch. And you need feet that will fit for each variety of those size stitches. So when you go into a Janome shop, you'll often see on the packages of feet, they'll say 5 millimeter, 7 millimeter, or 9 millimeter. And you have to pick the one that will fit your machine,
because they're not interchangeable.
and the newer machines, the newer Janome machines, meaning maybe the last 10 years or so, the feet are interchangeable between 9 millimeters, or interchangeable. Like, I mean, you can't use all the 9 millimeters fit on the 9 millimeters, all the 7 millimeters fit on the 7 millimeters, and all the 5 millimeters fit on the 5 millimeters. But if you get into the older brands of sewing machines, those feet may not fit.
Yeah. So that's very, very important to know that. Again, if you're not going through a dealer, an authorized dealer for your particular brand of machine, and you're going on to Amazon or another link somewhere, make sure you know the product number. And again, your manual will give you the product numbers, or it should. So that is something to be aware of. Another thing which I didn't write in my notes, but I just thought of it now because I was looking at a picture, are bobbins. Okay, not all machines take the same kind of bobbin. For example, Janome uses plastic bobbins. They won't take metal, at least not the models I have. They will not take a metal bobbin. And you will see things that say, oh, look, you can get all these metal bobbins for, a ridiculously low price. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter how low the price is. It's not a deal if it won't fit on your machine. And it also depends on whether or not how your machine loads the bobbin. Is it top down? Is it a top loading bobbin? Or is it a side loading bobbin? Because that makes a difference as well. So you got to make sure you have the right bobbin. But you'll often see things that say, oh, a package of 20 universal bobbins. Beware the word universal. And this goes with feet as well. You will see advertisements for complete collections of feet. Will fit, it says most machines or are universal. And you may be getting 30, 35 feet for a ridiculously low price, like $39.99 or something like that. And you're going, oh, well, I'll have feet for every occasion. Well, will they fit? Not necessarily. Also, it also brings up, the quality of the feet. They may be all plastic. Now, some feet do have certain plastic parts on them, but if the shaft on it and everything like that is all plastic, well, you get what you pay for.
And in the case of Janome, their official feet are not terribly expensive.
No.
So
they're not like Bernina. Berninas are very
Bernina's
expensive.
feet are quite expensive, but the regular Janome feet are not terribly expensive. They're not as cheap as buying a whole set for $15.
Yeah.
But beware that if you're sewing, I believe that you really need to have quality feet and things like that to diminish any problems that you might have.
And you need to have originals.
Yeah.
Don't cheap out. If you're buying a foot for a Janome, buy an official Janome foot. Now, I know some of you are going to write and go, well, I bought a big set of all these feet from Madame Sews or something like that, and they just work fine on my machine. Well, okay.
If you're happy with that.
If you're happy with it and it works, great. But what we're saying is be careful. They may or they may not work.
Like, you also have to know, like, for your bobbins, the class of bobbin that you're using. Like, for instance, most current Genomes use, and I'm saying most, not all, the top loading ones use class 15 bobbins, which are a certain size. They also, you may see advertisements for L bobbins and M bobbins, and they're more for industrial machines and not for Genome machines. But there is a difference. There's a Genome machine that has a side loading bobbin, and that, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not technical. I don't know for sure, but the class 15 bobbin may not work in those machines.
No.
You'd have to check with your dealer.
And I think generally speaking, again, I'm not absolutely sure about this, but if you see an L on a bobbin, that's one size. M is a little larger. And some machines can take an M. And why people like the larger bobbin is they don't run out of thread as fast with it. But again, you've got to see if your machine.
But generally, the machines, generally the modern Genome machines with top loading bobbins are class 15. The L bobbins won't work, and the M bobbins won't work. Now the Berninas is
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
We didn't say Surrey. Why is she coming up? Anyways, carry on.
Okay. The Berninas take a different type of bobbin. I don't know what kind of bobbin it takes. So you have to know what your particular machine takes for bobbin.
And guess
because we have had other people say, oh, like we recommend monfil.ca for pre-wound white bobbins. But you have to make sure you order the class 15s if you have a Genome top loading machine.
Because the other types they sell won't work.
Even somebody at sewing store ordered a bunch of bobbins online, and for Genome sewing machine had no idea that she needed class 15. And she's one that works in the store. And
we're going to come to points about that, but
she ordered L bobbins, and L bobbins don't fit.
No. So, yeah. Now, where do you find this information? Your manual.
Yes.
Look in your manual first. If you can't find it there, check with your dealer. Your dealer should know. However, we're going to talk about dealers in a minute because there's some assumptions there as well. So we'll come back to that. But, yeah, you got to get the right stuff. Also, I have heard of people trying to force things to work. Like they got the wrong foot size and they needed a 9mm, and they got a 5 because they didn't know they needed a 9, and then your needle is not in the right position. And guess what's going to happen? Your needle's going to crash into something. And that can cause you not just break your needle and be a safety hazard, but it could also damage your feed dogs. It could also damage your foot plate or presser foot plate. Yeah. And presser foot plates too. You can usually buy extra presser foot plates. Most sewing machines will come with at least a zigzag and probably a straight stitch. But like on a Genome, I can have another plate called an HP. It came with my machine, but not all plates, Genome plates, will work with all machines because on my machine, there is a sensor built into the presser foot that tells the machine when I drop the presser foot or presser plate. That's what they're called, isn't it? I want to call it a foot plate, but
no, it's not. It's a needle plate
or needle plate. Yeah, okay. Silver thing that sits on the bottom of your sewing machine. It has a sensor in it, and so when the machine knows which plate you have in it, and that then changes what stitches you can use with it. So, for example, if you're trying to use a straight stitch plate and and then you go to a decorative stitch, it won't let you do it on that machine because it knows what plate's in there. However, that's a upper end machine.
Not all machines will
do that.
That error. So,
and you might be able to put the wrong plate in and think it's going to work, and then,
like, I mean, I've been in the store before, and I need a 7mm foot and of a specific type, And then I'll be looking there and I see the foot I want, but then suddenly realize it's a 5 millimeter foot. And I know I can't get it because if I end up doing a zigzag or something like that and forget that I have a 5 millimeter foot on there, then the zigzag, if it goes beyond the ends of the 5 millimeter,
It's going to crash.
it's going to crash. So it's not worth trying to get it. Not only that, I don't think it will fit on your machine because I think the attachment isn't the same.
Yeah, at least on Genomi's.
Yeah.
But other machines, I don't know with that. And that's also another thing. When you go into a store and you see a wall of feet on it, and they may have your brand name on them, you've still got to read the packaging carefully to make sure, as Walter said, that it's the right size. So, yeah, if you're going into a store or you're going online to buy something, arm yourself with as much information about what will work on your machine. Again, your manual will help you with that, and go to your sewing machine website as well, because that information should be there. Okay, so another thing, don't make an assumption, is that all threads and needles are the same. It's just color. No. And we did a whole thing about threads and weight, so we're not going to get into that, but I do have a link to that video in the show notes below. But essentially, not all threads are going to work with all machines. I don't know why. Because, for example, my sewing machine does not really like sulky threads for some reason. It loves Aurifil, it loves King Tut, it loves Glide, but it doesn't like sulky. And I have no idea.
I know why.
Why?
Well, because sulky is a thicker thread.
So you need a bigger needle, and that's the other part.
Because I use sulky fair bit and on my 6700B, but if I have an 8012 needle in there, it doesn't work very well.
So
if I have a 9014 needle, it's fine.
Well, isn't that funny? Because I use a 9014 needle all the time, and my machine doesn't like sulky. It'll break all the time. So there you go.
But I suppose you have sulky in your bobbin too.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't. I always use the pre-wound bobbins from monfil.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
I should try my sulky again and see if it's been a while. And I have to be honest.
Well, that
you haven't tried it on the end.
My you know that shirt I just made with the different colored leaves on it?
Yeah.
Right? That's also non-sulky.
Well, just beware of the fact. I mean, so before you find that really great deal where you can buy like 20,000 spools of a certain brand of thread that you really think is love and is a great deal, make sure buy one thread, and make sure it works okay for you in the machine. Because, yeah, I don't know why, but the machines are picky.
Yeah, I know that. I've read, but I don't know if that's true. But I have heard some people say that Berninas are picky about which threads they use too. So, but on mine, I've used a number of different kinds of threads, the 6700B. But a lot of times it had to be, you have to be careful about what needle you're using. So.
Yeah, you got to have the right needle size as well. And again, we did a whole thing about needle sizes too. Because if you have a needle that the hole is too small, you're going to have a lot of thread breaks because you're going to shred your thread. Oh, that rhymes. If you have too big a hole, it's going to cause you bird's nests and all kinds of things like that, get tangled up around. So how do you know which thread to use with, or which needle to use with which thread? Well, you should be able to find that information out online.
Now, some threads will actually advertise, they recommend you to use a certain size needle.
Some write it right on the spool.
Yeah, some is written right on the spool. Sometimes you'll have to go to their website and look it up. Like, I mean, if I use a top stitch thread, which is a thicker thread usually, I will have to go to a larger needle to use it. If I go get a finer thread, I have to use a smaller needle. I generally sew with 50 weight or 40 weight thread, and I can get away with an 8012 needle with that. But if it's any thicker than that, like a 30 weight thread, then I have to go to a 9014 needle.
Yes. See, I use Aurifil 50 weight, and I use a 90 or a 1490, a 9014 needle. By the way, the numbers are, when you get if you go into a store that doesn't do European numbers, you use the second number. That's the American size, 14. 90 is the European. It's metric.
Yeah, and if you see a 9014 needle, it's actually European and American sizes on the needles. So.
Yeah. But I think we had a video about that
Yeah.
too on it somewhere in the back. But yeah, now another thing about your threads as well, and this is something that everybody who has an automatic threader learns the hard way. Your automatic threader cannot handle all sizes of thread. It doesn't matter what needle you have in there. The threader basically is a little wire that goes through the hole. And there's only a couple of sizes that it will work with. If you use too thick a thread, you'll bend that little wire that you can hardly see, and that's it. You can't use your automatic threader anymore unless you know how to straighten it out.
Yeah, I've been successful using in my threader with a 30 weight, 40 weight, and 50 weight. But if I go to a 12 weight, I can't use the automatic threader.
My very first major Janome machine, actually my 15,000, when I got that, within the first week, I couldn't use the threader anymore. In fact, I had the whole thing replaced. And then it happened again. And then, because nobody told me, and I didn't even think to look for it, I assumed that it's an automatic threader. So yeah, any thread I use is not a problem. Yeah, it was a problem. So now I know. And it is in my manual, but it was in very small print somewhere buried, because Janome manuals are not very well laid out. I can tell you that. But nobody told me that. In fact, when I took it to the dealer to have it fixed, nobody said to me that, well, you must have been using too thick of a thread for this. And your needle. Nobody told me that. Nobody told me that. Now that I know that, I haven't had any problems.
Yeah, and even when I've used a 30 weight, sometimes it doesn't work. So then I get reminded that I probably shouldn't be using the needle threader when I'm using that.
So that's important. Okay, don't assume that your automatic needle threader can handle any size of thread, because it cannot. Okay, so that takes me to talking about some things about fabric that people make assumptions about. Okay, first of all quilting cotton is the same. It is not. It is not. If you buy your quilting cotton at a reputable quilt store, you can probably rest assured that you're going to get decent quality of quilting fabric. Or for that matter, it's the same with shirt fabric or fabric for garments. You don't want you want stuff that's got a brand name on it, like Kona or who else? Kona, Northcott, any of those ones.
Bernatex's,
what's that? QT.
QWT, whatever. There's lots and lots of QT fabrics. There's lots and lots of brands. And like I've noticed that this particular one that I had cut out yesterday with the shirt is slightly different quality than some of the other fabrics that I've worked with.
But it's not a bad quality.
But it's actually a very good quality. It's a nice soft fabric. But it's still good quality, because you can usually tell when you wash the stuff that how much it frays.
Now, I know a lot of people like to buy their fabric at Walmart, because that's their closest outlet for getting fabric. Here where we live, our Walmart doesn't really sell fabric, but I know there are some Walmarts in the States in particular that actually sell fabric by yardage as well. The closest we had for a while at our Walmart were Fat Quarters, and they were cheap. They were, and I don't mean just in the price, I mean in the quality. You know what fabric
they
feels
had
like.
a low thread count, so they're very rough, or what do you call it? They're very porous type.
Well, the weave is
Yeah,
much more
the weave
open.
is looser.
So hold it up to light. If you're seeing a lot of light through it, then it's probably not good quality. But you'll know by the feel. You can feel the quality. If it feels heavy, if it doesn't feel like it's like slippery in your hands, like, I mean, of course, if you got satin or silk, but I mean, I'm talking primarily quilting cotton here. You probably got good quality. I wouldn't buy it from a place like Michael's in Canada or Joann's in the States. Now,
Or generic. Be careful what you're buying. If you go into a store that is discount fabrics or something like that, um, they'll sell variety of different types of fabrics, anywhere from good quality fabrics to really poor quality fabrics. Know your fabrics.
yeah,
What you're buying.
best to stick with a name brand that you know. If you see a name on it or no name on it at all, that might be a red herring, or not a red herring, but it might be a red flag saying, I'm questioning the quality of this fabric. And if it's really inexpensive, well, you get what you pay for. So,
I mean, if you're going to buy it to use it for a dusting rag, that might be one thing. But if you want a good quality shirt or a good quality quilt, and you spend all that time preparing a quilt and doing it, or preparing fabric for a garment, you want a garment that'll last, not that will you throw it in the washing machine and it ends up coming out in a ball.
yeah. And Walter's speaking from experience,
Well,
not his.
Not my experience, but a lady that I was that joined our garment class was fairly new to sewing, and she was all about saving money, all about sewing to save money or whatever. Later, she figured out that sewing doesn't necessarily save you money; it just gives you a custom product. But she went to a discount outlet for fabric in in our major city, and somebody said we were doing pockets for a pair of pants, and they just said, "Oh, just use cotton for your pockets or whatever." So she went to this discount place and she bought all this cotton fabric, all this supposedly quilting cotton fabric for $1.99 a meter, right? And which was recommended for us to pre-wash the fabric. So she put this fabric in her washing machine and washed it, and it came out in a tangled mess because it frayed all over the place. It came out as a one great big huge wrinkled ball. And she showed it to us and said, "How do I keep my fabric from doing this?" Right? It's like all kinds of threads and everything. And I basically said, make sure you buy good quality fabric.
I mean, if you're looking to do sewing on the cheap, get a new hobby, because you can't do sewing on the cheap. To make something that is quality, something that's going to stand up through several washings if it needs to be washed, or wear and tear like a quilt, you need to invest in.
I mean, there are other people that do inexpensive quilts by cutting out men's shirts and things like that. But often men's shirts are good quality fabric to begin with. So,
and they're buying them at thrift stores or something like that. Which, in my mind, if that is something that floats your boat, you're like doing that, the recycle, reuse kind of thing, fine. I have no desire to do that at all. I think, to me, to take a man's shirt and to pull it apart and then to cut fabric from it, I don't want to spend the time on that.
Yeah, but some people like that. But be aware of what kind of fabric you're using for the quality of the fabric. So if you want a lasting product.
Now, you can go on Amazon and you will find fat quarter bundles for a ridiculously low price. And they look really nice in the picture. But I bet you one, they probably come from China to start with. And not now, and there are fabrics, good quality fabrics that get made in China too. So, you don't know. But I would suspect that if you're picking up a fat quarter bundle of like 20 fat quarters for $9.99 on Amazon, chances are that stuff isn't that great. And something else you have to keep in mind too is not just the quality of the fabric, but the process they've used to color it. is it going to bleed? And that's another assumption that we're coming to. And there's two schools of thought about this. There are people who say they always pre-wash their fabric before they start cutting it for making a quilt or for making a garment. There's other people like me who never pre-wash anything. And here's why I don't, but this is an assumption, okay? And I am guilty of this. My assumption is if it is a brand name quilting cotton, like it's Kona, Northcott, whatever, then I am pretty sure that I'm not going to have to worry about major shrinkage when the quilt is finished and washed, and I don't have to worry about color bleed. But to be safe, when I wash a quilt the first time, I always throw in a couple of color catchers with it. And here's another assumption, and I just learned about this one the other day. So you've washed your quilt the first time, you threw in color catchers, they came out with a little bit of color in them, fine. The next time you go to wash that quilt, you're probably going to make the assumption it won't bleed anymore. It did all of that. That apparently is not true. It can bleed more. So you should always use a color catcher when you wash a quilt. Also, you should always wash a quilt at cold or just warm, not hot, and wash a quilt separately from any other clothing, okay? Because you don't know what the other things are like for bleeding. And never wash two quilts together. Unless you're absolutely positively those quilts have been washed a million times, you know there's no bleed left in them whatsoever. Because you don't need to put all that work in. Now, I know, however, that you do the opposite.
I pre-wash everything.
And why is that?
Well, basically, cotton, especially if I'm using cotton, it gets all the sizing out of it, right? And the sizing will cause it to shrink a little bit. So when you're making button bands, for instance, on shirts and things like that, right? If there's stabilizer in there and you want everything to shrink, you don't want anything to shrink even a little bit on a button band because you'll end up getting a bubbly button band or something like that for subsequent washes. So that's why I do it.
And another thing too about if you've got reds, blacks, and really dark blues, there are potential for those to bleed. I had some backing fabric once that I bought. I wasn't intending to pre-wash it, and it was it a red or dark blue or something, or maybe even black. At the store, they recommended that I pre-wash it. They said this one has been over dyed. That means there's more dye than it needs in it. They said, and they just knew from however they knew it. They says pre-wash this. I had to pre-wash it a couple of times before it stopped bleeding. There was a lot of over dye, but I wouldn't have done that. I would have assumed it was fine because I wasn't dealing with a cheap fabric. It was a brand name that I bought. But if they hadn't told me about that in the store and it was like ask me how I know kind of a thing because someone had a little disaster with that particular bolt of fabric. So yeah. So if I get something that's a really, really dark color and I think it's suspicious, I've never used the brand before for that, I might pre-wash it. But generally speaking, I don't because I'm making an assumption that's usually right because it's brand name. It's, good name. They make it so it won't bleed.
Well, I've just always done it because it's been recommended to me to pre-wash fabrics for garments. So I have always done it. It's sort of a precaution.
And I mean, I know some people will say yes, but there is shrinkage between if you're using a lot of different brands of cotton or something in it, your quilt may shrink unevenly. I have not had that problem. But I know some people say they have had that problem. So there you go. But that's something that
that's something personal.
Yeah.
You do what you want to do. So
yeah, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay. We've been talking about dealers. Okay, don't make an assumption your dealer knows everything.
Like the example that I had earlier about the dealer, or not, it wasn't the dealer, it was an employee at the store that didn't know that they had to order a class 15 bobbin for their machine.
See, our basic assumption is when we go into a quilting store that sells sewing machines, for example, that everybody that works at that store are trained. They know everything, so they can help you with it. No, that's not true. The store that we go to, there are various levels of understanding depending on how long the employee has been there. The person who knows the most happens to be the owner.
Especially if you're purchasing a sewing machine.
Yeah. She's an authorized dealer for the store, for Janome, and she's been trained by them multiple times over and over with it, like to the point where she's actually gone.
And she's been in the business for 30
years.
plus years.
Yeah.
So
you can pretty much trust what she has to say. But if you buy a machine at some place that, first of all, the only machines that our quilting store sells is Janome's. But if you go into a store that sells Janome's, Brothers, Juki, Bernina, it's that old adage, a jack of all trades, master of none, because there's an awful lot to know. Maybe they do, but the chances are that the person you're dealing with, who may be an employee, may not know everything about every type of machine. So you're taking your chances. What you need to do is research. If you're going out to a dealership to buy a sewing machine, go on the internet, go to the company's website, read up on your machine. Have questions? Ask them. Write them down, ask them. And if you get like an answer that's sort of like, oh yeah, you don't need to worry about that, move on. No, that should be a red flag. They don't know the answer to that question. Think twice about dealing with them. Because I have heard some horror stories from other subscribers on here that have told me they went to such and such in there and they knew nothing about the machine. They say, yeah, there it is. Or kind of a thing.
Not only that, most dealers, especially the owners of the shop, know a lot about their sewing machines. Most of the time,
usually, but let's not make an assumption.
No, most of the time. But I mean, a lot of people will go into a store and see that a sewing machine is maybe $50 more than the one that they can purchase online. So they want to save $50 and purchase the one online.
But then, so you buy the one, where are you going to get servicing?
Yeah, you lose your association with the dealer, because if you bring your sewing machine that you bought online back to a dealer, they may charge you to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you buy it from a dealer and you're having a minor problem, like you're having trouble threading it or something like that, you bring it back to the dealer that you purchased from. They have some loyalty in helping you out with it.
Yeah. So two assumptions here that you should never make about where you buy your sewing machine. One, that they actually service the machines as well there. Because you would think, well, if I buy the machine here, I'm sure I can get it serviced here. Not necessarily. Some do not have, and they will tell you if you ask, oh, sorry, we don't service them. Here's the name of a couple of places that you can maybe go to or whatever. But in my way of thinking, you want to have ready access to a service department wherever you buy your machine. Because I've heard people who've said that they've had to send their machine out to some place hundreds of miles away from them, and it's taken 6 or more weeks to get it back. In fact, Stephanie Stitches was telling me the other day, we were talking about this, that she had a sewing machine in for servicing, and it took them over 6 weeks to get it serviced. And they also did more than what she wanted them to do. It didn't need to. Like, they cleaned it all as well. It didn't need cleaning because they were charging her for that too. So she wasn't really a happy camper about that situation. The other assumption too, I was going to say about servicing, assume that if you have a problem with the machine, or you've decided when you get the machine home that when you've used it for a week, you don't like it, you'd like a better model, make sure that you've gone in and checked out what their return policy is on, because all sales may be final in some cases. warranty. All sewing machines have a warranty, but they're a manufacturer's warranty. They're not necessarily the store's doesn't put a warranty on it. So a store may help you with warranty work, or they may not. They may say we'll have to contact
Yeah,
the
like
company
make sure
directly.
that their repair uh, person is an authorized repair person for the manufacturer.
It's not just
So,
Joe down the street who's
yeah,
been tinkering with car engines and other things for years. That kind of thing.
because if it goes in, if you buy your machine from a store and they may have a service person that looks after repairing older machines, but that person isn't authorized to the manufacturer of the machine, then if your machine is broken, they may have to send it to the manufacturer and not have Joe the repair guy do it.
Yeah.
So
Now, to change the topic a little bit away from actual equipment and things, some other things like, okay, when you're first get into quilting or garment sewing and you get your confidence level built up and you've made, several creations that you really like, and you decide, I'm going to surprise my sister or my nephews and nieces or the neighbor or something. I'm going to give them one of my quilts or one of my, something that you've made or whatever. Because they'll be thrilled with it. Don't assume they will be. I assumed certain people would like a quilt before. And when I've offered to make them one, I have been turned down. In fact, my sister turned me down. I thought she'd want one. She was redoing her bedroom at the time. I said, hey, do you want a new quilt or something? I can make you one. You can tell me what colors you want. No, no, your quilts are nice, but no, I don't want one. Well, when you hear that, it kind of irks you. It hurts your feelings, right?
I'd be jumping at the chance to have a quilt because
Yeah.
when I was younger, I admired all the quilts and stuff, and I thought it'd be really nice to have one.
Yeah.
And I'd be jumping at the chance, but some people.
So the best thing to do there is don't make an assumption. Ask them what they want. I've also heard about people making baby quilts for a new arrival, and they've just gone ahead and picked the design and the colors themselves. And then the next time they went over after they gave them the gift, they find that the dog is now laying on it because basically the colors weren't the colors that the mother or the new mother or the new parents. It didn't work with the decor in the nursery. So I did hear somebody on a podcast I was listening to the other day said what they do is if they're going to gift a baby quilt to somebody, they ask the mother to be or whatever and say, okay, I would like to gift you a quilt, but I want to make sure it's something that, you will like. So, do you have a certain color scheme that you would like? Do you have a certain design that you would like? Even size. And in fact, the one lady that was talking about this says that what she does is she takes the mother to be out for a little shopping trip to a fabric store. Might be a bit of an extreme. I don't know. I mean, they're not going to be surprised. Well, they will be surprised because they're not seeing how it's being made. It's different from seeing a pattern or whatever, and then you get the final product. But basically, they were making sure that the person really wanted it because you put all that work in it. There goes your ego right out the window, and they go, no. Or you see that it's being used for something else that it was not intended for.
I mean, we've heard of people making special quilts for their sons or daughters or whatever, and only for like the son or something to say, well, that's something my mother does. It's nothing for me.
Yeah, well, what he's talking about is something there was a lady at the guild I used to belong to, and she was all excited. Her son had just opened up a micro brewery in our area, and she was making for his store front a quilt with beer fabrics and things. She searched all over for different fabrics that she could put into this to give it a beer theme and the whole bit. And she was really pleased with the end result. And I saw it, and it was. She did a wonderful job. And I thought, this would be great. Your son will be really excited to get that. And she was going to give it to him on the day that he opened the store, grand opening, so he could hang it up and the whole bit. Well, ran into her son at another function I was at. He was actually there giving samples out of their product. And when I saw that the brewery that brewery's name, I knew who this guy was. And I says, "Oh," I said, "is your mother such and such?" And he says, "Yeah." And I says, "Yeah, I know her. I'm in the same guild." I said, "So how'd you like the quilt she made? It looked really great." He said, "Yeah, not a quilt person." And, what do you say to that? I said, "Oh, your mother was really excited about it." He says, "Yeah, well, that's what she does." But he says, "It's just not appropriate to our aesthetic in our store." Ooh. I didn't go any further with the conversation to ask him, "And so how's your mother taking this?" Because she was really excited about this that she had made and worked on for so long and the whole bit. So, yeah. So, yep, you might want to make sure you check that kind of thing out. And another thing, Walter said, well, he'd be happy getting a quilt as a gift. I mean, it's always like quilts. Not me. We got a quilt as a wedding gift, a small one, a lap quilt. And I looked at it and I could appreciate that there was a lot of work put into it and, was nice. But I said to Walter, "What the hell are we going to do with this? We need another blanket on our bed."
Well, that was at that particular time.
Well, yeah, but the reason why was because I had never made a quilt. I had not been around quilts. I knew what they were and things, but it was just not something I never thought I'd be interested in quilts at that time. This is quite a while ago, almost 20 years ago, kind of a thing. When this happened. I mean, I certainly never said it to the person. And now, however, I look at that and I appreciate the work and the time, the effort and the expense and everything that went into it. But that's because I know now. And I think that's something we can't assume about other people, that they will have the same appreciation for something like that. And they see it as handmade. And you know what a lot of people think, and we've had this discussion before, so I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but a lot of people think that because something is handmade, that it's cheap in terms of how much it costs and everything like that. And we all know the answer to that. Like, we know that's the exact opposite of the reality. So, that's an assumption. Another assumption is around retreats. Okay. Retreats can be very expensive. And I don't think this would happen very often, but I know that there have been some people I have heard have said that, yeah, this retreat was really inexpensive. It's only going to be about $200 for 3 days at this place. That's really good because you get your food and your accommodation and the whole bit. Wait, are you going to be sleeping under a rock outside? That seems just a little cheap. So don't make assumptions about what your fee includes for a retreat. Now, usually at legitimate retreats, they will list, like, this includes double accommodation for 3 nights. It includes your meals, but what meals? Does it 3 meals a day, brekkie, lunch, and dinner? Or is it like brunch and dinner? Or is it like brekkie, no lunch, dinner? That kind of thing.
Or is it just breakfast and you have to provide your own lunch and dinner?
Yeah. So, you may want to don't make some assumptions about that, because not all retreats are done the same. So you need to do research as well for that kind of thing. Okay. Now, of course, I'm having a retreat, and I guarantee you something. You can make this assumption safely. You're going to have a good time.
And you have to make your own lunch and dinner.
And you have to make your own lunch and dinner. Yeah, that's right. And you're not staying over at my place. It's all online. So those are some assumptions you can safely make. Okay. So another assumption. People on YouTube that do quilting or sewing videos know what they're doing, and they're experts. Notice crickets in here. We make YouTube videos. We might sound sometimes like experts because a lot of it is the way you deliver the information. We are not experts. And we usually say, well, this is our opinion. This is what we know. This is a possibility. Maybe you have found something different. But you watch YouTube videos, obviously. And there are many people on YouTube that come across as knowing everything. No. And even the ones that do know a lot about stuff, they show you a technique and they tell you this is the best way to do it. Maybe not. Maybe it's not for you. Like Jenny Doan always says, okay, this is the way I do it because this is the way my brain works. But she says you have to do what works for your brain. And we all have different ways of doing things that are not better or worse. They just work. So be careful of that because there's an awful lot of people on YouTube, not just in quilting and in sewing, on anything, that sound like this is gospel truth. I know what I'm talking about. You need to do what I tell you to do because I'm an expert. Well, are there any experts in the world, really, when you come down to it? There's always room for.
I mean, there's people that know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's always room for improvement.
Yeah. And nobody knows everything about everything, right?
And everybody likes doing things different ways. So, and what other way I sew and stuff like that, I may do things a different way than other people do it. So,
yeah, I try not to say to anybody that says, well, I made my flying geese this way. I try, and even though it may not be the way I do it, it may be a way that I have tried and it didn't work for my brain, as Jenny would say, with it. I'm not going to turn around and say that person, well, you're wrong. That's not how you do it. But there are a lot of people that do. If you watch the Opinionated Quilter, okay, now she does not say this is the absolute right way to do it. She does say, in her opinion, but she has a very strong opinion. I really like her, but I wouldn't want to cross her. I can tell you that. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, look up the Opinionated Quilter. You'll get the point that I'm making there. Okay, other things here. Okay, subscription boxes. People make an assumption that, oh, I'm going to get a lot for the price because it's a subscription box. So it's going to be, I'm going to get more value than what I'm paying for it. No, you're not. Not always. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But, one assumption you can safely make is these people want to make money from this. They're not just going to give it to you for nothing. So they have figured out what they need to put in that box and what price they need to charge in order to still make a profit and have you become a repeat customer for it. And right now, there seems to be a whole lot of YouTube videos where people are doing comparisons of subscription boxes. And I've watched a few. And they're basically saying this box is good for this reason, that one, but compared to this box, it isn't so good here or there or whatever, which I think in my mind makes things even more confusing. That I have a subscription box. I subscribe to a box, but I'm waiting for my next one to come because I think it's going to be the last one. And I'll talk about that on a future video. Why, if I make the decision to cancel my subscription. Stephanie Stitches just recently stopped a subscription she's been getting for a long time, and she has a video about it, and she tells you why. And it is not she's not criticizing the company or anything like that about it. She's just saying why it's not appropriate for her right now because she's a more advanced quilter and the box is maybe a little bit more geared towards people just getting into quilting. But there were a few people who took offense to that. And they shouldn't have, because she didn't say anything offensive. So, I guess basically on when it comes to YouTubes and opinions and things is to always assume it is somebody's personal opinion. It isn't gospel truth. If you disagree with it, that is fine. You can disagree. You don't have to do what they tell you. Okay? You don't have to believe everything.
Yeah, like the things that we've discussed today. There are things that we know and are our personal opinions.
And we would not purposely steer you wrong. We're giving you our opinion. We're giving you our experience. We are not saying that everything that comes out of our mouth is absolutely the gospel truth. It is what we believe and what we have experienced. So down the road, who knows? Someone may tell us something we didn't know anything about, like what I said about going into my quilt store and I made the assumption this fabric was going to be okay, and they told me, no, it's going to bleed. That was good advice about pre-washing that particular brand. Otherwise, it would have been disaster. There was a lot of dye came out of that. I know my color catchers were really black on that one. So, okay, any other assumptions that you can think of? Anything in your world of sewing that people make assumptions about?
Well, there's the assumption that people think that you make it yourself, it's going to be cheaper than the stuff you buy in the store.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, well, with garment sewing especially, if you think you're going to put together a shirt or a pair of pants or something or a dress, and it's going to be like you're going to have a couture designer thing and it's going to cost you like next to nothing. No, there was a time for that. There was when fabric was really, really cheap. Like in our parents' day, I heard someone talking on a podcast the other day about fabric being 50 cents
there
a
are
yard.
some things like if you compare the shirts that I make to a shirt you buy at Walmart, no, it's not going to be as cheap as the Walmart shirt. But if you compare it to a shirt that you buy at Nordstrom's,
well,
then maybe it is worthwhile to make it yourself. So yeah, it depends on your perspective as to what quality of clothing that you're purchasing.
Yeah.
So I mean, basically, when you make it yourself, you're ending up with a custom product, right? So, and you have to look at that. That's the same with quilts. If you make a quilt with all your quilting on it and everything else, it's going to be a nicer product or a more custom product than if you buy bed in a bag at Walmart.
Yeah, well, it's also going to be better made.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And a better quality material
Yeah.
and everything else. So,
and more care put into it than
right.
a mass-produced.
Than a mass-produced product. But if you're thinking that you're going to go out and buy the fabric to make a quilt and everything else, and you're going to be able to make a quilt the size of bed in the bag for the same price as bed in the bag, that's not going to work.
Yeah. So if you want bed in the bag, buy a bed in the bag or whatever. So anyways, I'm assuming we are done.
I guess so.
Okay, so there's an assumption we're safe with. Okay, so anyways, we thought we brought these up. It was something that came from...
I'm sure this will generate lots of comments.
Oh, I am sure.
People will all have their own opinions on stuff.
Well, I guess they assume that we care about their opinions. Nothing. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, before we get into trouble, we better... Trouble, yeah, well, I'm assuming I can speak. Let's assume that we are done for the day, and thank you for joining us. And yeah, if you've got suggestions for future topics, please let us know, because we need them. And yeah, okay, have a great week.
Have a good weekend,
and we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.
Bye.